Hey, Chum.
When Cyberpunk 2077 came out, I, like a lot of players, was disappointed. I don't think I was one of its harshest critics, simply because I actually thought some aspects of the game were pretty good, and other people just dismissed it entirely, and I think those are its harshest critics. But I still think my disappointment ran deeper than most people, because a lot of them were fine with the game itself, but they were not fine with the state it was released in. Filled with bugs, barely a working product in last-gen consoles, one could argue money was fleeced from those trying to run it on a PS4 or Xbox One. But my problems ran deeper. Even if they fixed all of the bugs, they did not deliver what they promised. I expected Deus Ex in an open world, they delivered a buggy first-person GTA. Maybe it was my fault for expecting too much. Maybe they overpromised. Maybe it was a mix of both, depending on the different aspects that we can decide to discuss. There is plenty of room to discuss this after all, but I'm not interested in doing that right now. But with that in mind, I did something that a reasonable human being should never do. I hate-purchased Phantom Liberty. I went to my fridge, I grabbed a full bottle of Haterade, fully expecting it to be trash, bugless probably now that they fixed it, but still trash, and that people were praising it because, well, they were fine with a first-person GTA and they didn't come looking for a deeper RPG experience in the first place. I was ready to trash the DLC completely, and maybe conceded a couple of victories where I thought it deserved it, nothing more. So imagine my surprise when I didn't need to open up my bottle of Haterade at all. Is Phantom Liberty the perfect version of the game that was promised to us? Absolutely not. It is built on top of a broken foundation, a rotten foundation of broken promises. Yes, let's go edgy like that. It could never be what was truly promised to us. But given what they had to work with, the developers did one hell of a job of turning it around. They did not only release a campaign that I personally think it's more interesting and gives more opportunity for player expression than the main story one, but they also overhauled the entire gameplay system with a free update named 2.0, which, kinda awkward since this is not really Cyberpunk 2077 2, it's still Cyberpunk 2077, but more importantly, it completely changes the way the skill tree, cyberware, and equipment works. First, perks are now closer to an actual skill tree than the original, freeform pick whatever you want style from the base game, which is both good and bad. Good because I can appreciate the new way it is organized, especially when you place enough points on a particular stat and you are free to pick any perk from that tier, but that doesn't always happen. You sometimes have to have a fully complete perk from a previous tier to get the perk from that tier, so I miss the ways you could get some crazy bonuses but keep the extra points by focusing only on what you really wanted. That was how it worked in the base game. Skill trees are nice, and I enjoy them as much as the next person, but I do think there was something unique about the way the original game let you just pick and choose things, so I kind of miss that uniqueness. What I do 100% enjoy with no reservations right now is that while some equipment can get you some small armor bonuses, armor is now basically completely tied to your cyberware. Get thicker skin, take less damage. Makes sense. Of course you can't just shove it in on every single slot until you are more machined than Adam Smasher himself. There is a limit, which you can upgrade by finding progression shards, which are small little bonuses scattered around the game, or by unlocking perks that raise your cyberware limit. Some of the slots are also locked out behind perks, so keep that in mind as you upgrade. All of this also means that you can look stylish by wearing whatever you want without needing to worry too much about the stats, and that's the real improvement. With all of these changes in mind, it's no surprise that the developers recommend that you start a fresh new save. My original intent was to load one of my endgame saves and use that to play Phantom Liberty, but given my old saves are now probably completely screwed after the update, I decided to start a fresh game, remake my old character and everything. Thankfully, the developers added an option to skip straight to Phantom Liberty, which gives you a decently developed main character with 1/3 of the main story done, so the expansion is accessible, and a build focused on hacking and stealth, though you can completely redesign its point allocation once. This focus on hacking and stealth makes a lot of sense when you consider what the main theme of Phantom Liberty is. Basically, it is a very edgy spy thriller. The plot of Phantom Liberty starts when V gets a call from a mysterious hacker called Songbird. She asks him, or her, depends on your character, to infiltrate Dogtown, a walled-off area in the middle of Night City that is controlled by Kurt Hansen, a military man who landed in Night City years ago in order to fight a war. Unfortunately for him, the war was pretty much cancelled and his troops cut off the support, so he decided to wall himself inside Dogtown and make it his own personal kingdom alongside with his own private army, now called Barghest. And yes, if that name instantly reminded you of the Fate Grand Order Muscle Mummy instead of the mythological creature, welcome to the club! The reason V needs to get inside Dogtown ASAP is because Songbird is in a plane with the President of the new United States of America inside, and that plane is about to crash right inside Dogtown. Naturally, it's a bad idea to keep the president in the territory of the man who was essentially abandoned by his own government, so one thing leads to another and Songbird goes missing, so now V is a spy in the employment of the NUSA, working alongside hardened agent Solomon Reed, played by the one and only Idris Elba, trying to keep the president alive and find Songbird and just understand how exactly everything went so bad. The story is pretty damn fantastic. It comes with all of the twists and turns that you'd expect from a spy thriller, but also it doesn't cynically play into an everybody is a lying asshole kind of spy story. Everybody has clear motivations, and they rarely straight up lie about those. The lies come in how they plan to achieve their goals and who is going to ultimately have to pay the price for their choices, which makes it hit all the harder when you think somebody is lying to you, because they are all very understandable human beings stuck in a very bad situation. Except for Kurt. Kurt is just a straight up bad guy through and through, the Bond villain that is necessary to unite the plot and serve as the black paint to the various other shades of grey. But as a no-dialogue choice lover, what I really enjoyed about the expansion storyline the most was the larger amount of responses that I could give when prompted for dialogue. A big problem that I had with the main game of Cyberpunk 2077 was that it felt like often I only had 2 dialogue choices, saying yes or saying yes but in a mean way. And if the game offered me a second choice that's a skill check that I pass or that is related to my V's past life, I felt obligated to choose it because damn it, I gotta get every bit of content from the choice that I made before after all. So often it didn't feel like a role-playing game at all. Might as well have removed all dialogue choices and made V an actual solid, unified and interesting character. I joked about that before, but it's still one of those it's funny because it's true things. I actually felt that I had more freedom to roleplay from the choices that I got to make as Geralt in the Witcher series than I did when I was playing my own handcrafted character in 2077. And then, in a scene at the beginning of Phantom Liberty, soon after you escape with the president from the crash site and she changes into a disguise, you get 5 different dialogue options. 2 to proceed with the scene, and 3 optional ones, including 2 where you can comment on her clothes. And while that scene is of little significance in the great scheme of things, and there are many more spoilery, better ones later, but unfortunately more spoilery, that scene really marked the moment that I started really getting into Phantom Liberty. It doesn't help that everything until that point is basically one giant scripted set piece after the other, which was honestly a little bit of a killjoy, but from this point onwards, things just got better and better. And yes, I actually had multiple moments in which a dialogue choice related to the life path that I chose showing up, but there were multiple other choices available that I felt were much better suited to the situation, to the character that I was playing, and so I picked those. Even the gigs are better. While a lot of the side missions in the original game were pretty simple and tended to end in just one way, you just had to do a checklist, just go to a place and do A, then B, then C, then that's the end. Every gig in Dogtown has at least 2 endings, with a variety of nuance between them, allowing you to give slight variation to these 2 endings. I played as a very client takes precedence V, a true merc who always delivered what they were paid for, so long as the clients were upfront about what they were paying him for. And the fact that every gig basically allowed me not only to do that, but also I could try to change course midway into delivering only half of what was requested, or just screwing the client even if I didn't pick those options, the fact that they were there, well, it was just fantastic. For once in this RPG game, I felt like I was actually role-playing. However, I must disclose that maybe I liked Phantom Liberty's story better simply because I like spy stories. And Phantom Liberty is a true one, from getting a gun on your side in the middle of the slums, to going to a fancy party atop a giant tower with all of the luxury you would expect from a place that invited some of the richest people in the entire world, to infiltrating a high-tech base while disguised as someone else. Phantom Liberty manages to hit every single expected note of the spy genre, while still keeping everything tied together to Cyberpunk's world and lore. I mean, the Cyberpunk genre does deal a lot with corporate intrigue, so it was not that much of a reach, but still it's very impressive what the developers accomplished here. And in the meantime, between the original release and the release of Phantom Liberty, I also gained an appreciation for the amount of immersion Cyberpunk tries to keep you in by letting you walk around and take a look at things even while conversations are going on. You know, Half-Life 2 style. Do kids these days even know what Half-Life 2 is anymore? It's like 19 years old at this point. But I hope that you, the viewers, do know what Half-Life 2 is at the very least. Back on topic, it's pretty cool to have a cutscene where you try to negotiate to prevent a firefight with a duo of characters, only to keep full control of your character, and if you walk around you can have one of them tell you to back up when you get too close. This is not a dig against games that uses cinematic angles or just zoom into the characters' faces. Hey, we all love Baldur's Gate 3, right? But I feel now that I noticed this, that I cannot stop noticing how immersive Cyberpunk tries to be, which is something that carries from the main game, so hey, full marks for that. Does this mean that Cyberpunk's dialogue is now perfect? No. It still carries the problem of the game not really having any interesting designs or gimmicks behind it. There is no charisma perk that unlocks new dialogue options and no possible failure states. Basically, there is no persuasion dice roll behind it to open new possibilities and make things more interesting. This is due to the way everything around it was designed. It's simply impossible at this point to insert something like that due to the way the dialogue flows and the way it's always supposed to push the player forward to the next story beat. There is no way for the player to fail a check and then suddenly enter a firefight, then continue the story from that. This system was just not built to support that. But, like the nerd that I am, I do have a few interesting ideas that I'd like to see them try. They could keep the dialogue system like this, but give us a perk where we can scan more of a person's entire history and have it display on the screen, alongside with the person's heart rate and other interesting information, like the pheromone gadget from Deus Ex Human Revolution. Then give us a maze of dialogue options with only one path leading to success and have us find out the path by reading the target's history and vitals. Something similar actually happens during the main story of Phantom Liberty, and I think using that as a basis to develop a mechanic for the sequel would be a really cool idea. Also, honestly, I just want information spam all over my screen because that's how you really know you're living in the future Cyberpunk hellscape. If there is anything I want you to take from this video, is that good RPG is when the game gives you at least 4 dialogue options even when they change nothing, and then it shoves text all over the screen. As for the main stage of the expansion, Dogtown itself, it is incredibly small compared to Night City. I'd wager it is about 5% of the rest of the map, which is, for me, actually a really good thing. It is not good by itself in isolation, of course, but if we assume the developers poured as much love in this region as they did on the big landmarks of Night City, it should make for a very memorable location, and I'm happy to say that yes, the developers poured their heart out and the result is a small but memorable location that's just as beautifully detailed as the rest of the game. Whether you are looking at the entire city from the vantage point of the abandoned museums of Terra Cognita, or enjoying the bars and the mood of the Longstack Shores Plaza, or simply running across walkways and containers high above the ground, Dogtown is a fantastic place. The fact that I even distinctly remember some of the names of these locations should be an indication of how great they look and feel. I always enjoyed smaller open roads than the big ones because the repetition of walking through the same neighborhood as you go from point to point breeds familiarity and intimacy with a setting that a massive open road usually fails to, even when they also get repetitive and you just see the same thing copy-pasted over and over again in new locations. Actually, that's worse. That gives off a worse vibe when they do that. As for the gunplay and combat, well, it's still Cyberpunk 2077 at the end of the day. Everything I said in the previous review remains true. The guns feel good to shoot, locking onto an enemy and firing heat-sinking bullets is still sci-fi as heck, and this time I exchanged my Cyberhack module for a Sandevistan one, which essentially allowed me to slow down time at the cost of not being able to quick hack anything. I have to admit that I'm still a boring shoot man since I rebuilt my character from the previous playthrough and focused on the cool skill tree, which is all about using precision weapons like pistols and snipers in order to score headshots for massive damage, but even my playstyle was accommodated for with a new skill tree exclusive to Phantom Liberty that allowed me to unlock a new ability which highlights weak spots in the enemy cyberware, which pop up all over their body, meaning that I actually had quite some interesting targets to hit. And also, I quickly found a revolver that sent my enemies flying and ragdolling all over the place with a single shot, which I kept using until the very end, so sorry if my combat footage looks boring. I just love pistols in this game. My only problem is that I put 0 points, perks, abilities, anything into stealth, and considering some of the side objectives and some of the main objectives that you have to go through in this expansion, it really felt like they really wanted me to either be a hacker or stealth, but I just completely abandoned both of those, and that resulted in a lot of moments in which was like, oh no, I probably should have stealthed through this place. Now, an interesting thing to keep in mind regarding game length and progress is that I finished Cyberpunk 2077 with about 30 hours of playtime while completing a lot of the side missions. But here, after finishing every gig and the main story content of Phantom Liberty, I was 18 hours into my playthrough. It is a big expansion to the game in terms of mission content. It's basically 2/3 of the main game in the expansion, as an expansion, and I was fully decked out with max rarity gear and 2 fully leveled up stats by the end of it. It's basically a new game unto itself, I guess. Oh, is that why they called it Update 2.0? Kinda makes sense now. But hey, you also have to take into account that you essentially start with 1/3 of the game already done if you chose to skip to Phantom Liberty, which is why I was already pretty decently leveled up at the start of the game. So, at the end of the day, do I recommend Phantom Liberty? Yes, I do, but the real tough question is, do I recommend you to skip to Phantom Liberty if you never played Cyberpunk 2077 before? And that's a complex question. You will be skipping large chunks of the story, so if you decide to do the rest of the campaign, you'll suddenly be receiving phone calls from characters that you never met and witnessing the heartbreaking deaths of, well, characters that you have never met and have no reason to care about. So if it is your first time, the reasonable thing to do is to recommend you to start from the very beginning. But also, I just do not care for the main story of Cyberpunk 2077 at all, man. I think it starts interesting and gets very good at the very end, but there is a bunch of stuff I just do not care about in the middle. So I can't wholeheartedly recommend that you play through the main campaign from a personal perspective, but I can recommend it with the caveat that hey, maybe you like it more than I did. But now that all of that review stuff is over, we can finally talk about what really matters. Yes, I've watched Edge Runners. Yes, it is fantastic. Yes, Rebecca is best girl. Yes, those are just the most basic possible opinions, but I just wanted to confirm if there was any doubt that yes, I like Edge Runners, okay? It is easily the best part of this entire franchise. Now that that important question is settled, I'd like to thank you for watching my ramblings to the very end, and I hope to count on your support in the very near future when I post a new video. Thank you.